Howdy, howdy. We are live on another Friday night for the hashtag TQIF lineup. That is your weekly must-see YouTube, starting with the Tex-Trek. Actually, no, it's starting with our friend Marcelo over on Balloonhead Productions is doing some, I think, original series reviews starting at 6 o'clock on Fridays. So you can check those out over there. But yeah, then we have a live Tex-Trek podcast. We're talking about the latest episode of Star Trek Picard Watcher right now. We cover every episode every week. And then later on tonight, there will be some late night fun over yonder on the Starfleet Boy After Dark channel. So when you're done here, if you're checking us out live, you can just mosey on over to the Starfleet Boy After Dark show, and there will be some fun with Starfleet Boy and friends. But and just a disclaimer: we were hoping to have Aaron back on the show this week, but he couldn't make it. But hopefully we'll have him back next week. But there's a lot to talk about in this episode, so I think we should just go ahead and get started.
Right on.
I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
This is Brian.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 183rd installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek old and new, and proud members of the TrekSphere network. Tonight, we are talking about Star Trek Picard Season 2, Episode 4, Watcher, teleplay by Juliana James and Jane Maggs, story by Travis Fickett and Juliana James, and again directed by Lea Thompson, who is following up on her Star Trek directorial debut last week. They're doing that block shooting format thing. They did it in Season 1 of Picard, where most directors would do 2 episodes at a time. Actually, probably kind of helped them through COVID protocol productions, I would think. It might have streamlined some things. So, but yeah, so maybe the next 2 episodes will also share the same director. Before we talk about this episode, though, just a few things to bring up real quick. There was some big Star Trek news this week about the motion picture director's cut 4K that will be released on Paramount Plus for those of you in the United States or Latin America or the Nordics. I think that's the only places that have access to this, but if you're in one of those places, you will be able to stream the director's cut of Star Trek the Motion Picture in 4K on April 5th on First Contact Day. And Brian's really excited about that.
Yes. The rest of the world will just have to wait a few hours.
And also in North America, at least, they're doing the Phantom events in theaters on Sunday, May 22nd and Wednesday, May 25th, I believe, where you can actually go see it on the big screen. And then in, I believe, September, later in the year, it will be released on physical media. You can buy the 4K Blu-ray. That set off an alarm at Brian's. That's how
so excited
he is. Yes.
Yeah, so, it's programmed to just hear the words Star Trek the Motion Picture and it goes off.
And in addition to that, in 2 weeks from this weekend, it will be Star Trek Mission Chicago. Speaking of First Contact Day, that's kind of like their celebratory event. The big official roaming convention. They're going to do a different city every year. This first year will be the Windy City of Chicago. I will be there. Starfleet Boy will be there. Our friend Trek on the Tube will be there. And so if anyone wants to meet up with us, we're actually hosting a meetup Saturday, April 9th at the Arc Bar. It's like right next door to the convention, basically. So that'll, I think, be like around 7:30 p.m. So if you want to come hang out with us in person, you can find us there. And also, if you just see us, walking around the convention floor, please, by all means, come say hi to us. We want to talk to you. We want to meet you. We want to shake your hand. If you see someone that that kind of looks like the Tex-Trek dude, he's got like this cap on, this big beard. That's me. Like that. Just go ahead and come up to me and talk to me. I want you to say hi to me. So please, by all means, go ahead and say hi to us. Or if you don't want to, meet us, just like ignore us and act like you didn't see us and turn around and go the other direction. But, whatever floats your boat. But yeah, we want to meet people. So that'll be fun. If you're going to be there, please say hi.
Fatheree, I think they should give you a secret Texas signal and just kind of while they're walking by, if they just go, yeehaw, you have to answer. And if they don't respond, it's not you.
Okay, yeah, I'll say howdy, because that's what I always say when we start the live stream. The podcast audience doesn't know. We have Elurians, we have listeners, and then we also have watchers. So we have like the YouTube audience or the watchers, and then everyone else is an Elurian, like Guinan. They're just the listeners. So, but yeah, I do a little pre-show before the official podcast segment kicks off. But, anyways, but. Brian and Dave, I really want to pick your brains and get to know your thoughts on this episode. I'm just going to recap it real quick before we get into that. I'm going to read the official synopsis and then kind of expand on that with spoilers to summarize the episode. But the official synopsis reads, with time running out to save the future, Picard takes matters into his own hands and seeks out an old friend for help. Meanwhile, Rios ends up on the wrong side of the law, and Jurati makes a deal with the Borg Queen. Picard runs into Guinan to try to find the Watcher, and then that actually points him in the right direction, and he meets what appears to be a human version of Laris, or at least a human played by Orla Brady, right? And while that's going on, Rios is detained by immigration in the United States. He's detained by ICE. So Raffi and Seven are on the hunt to save Rios, find Rios, and rescue him. And Jurati and the Borg Queen continue to get dangerously closer to one another. But yeah, we'll just each go around the room and share our opening thoughts on this episode, just kind of our broad impressions, and then we'll talk about it in more detail. Dave, would you like to go first with the opening statement?
Sure, let's do it. So, Father, you're always talking about how big a fan of Star Trek and time travel you are, and I think it's like that's a well that they go back to a little too often. But I will always admit that you're right that they do it pretty well. It is something Trek does well, and they are like hip deep in it right now, and I think that's why I'm really enjoying it. It's something they're super good at with Star Trek. I like the introspective stuff in this episode at Chateau Picard. I like that kind of the Jurati and the Borg Queen facing off, and what sort of feels like a mental and like emotional chess match. I liked Raffi and Seven doing Thelma and Louise, and I'm excited to see how this will all tie to the original series, because it sure seems like there's going to be a tie to it. And I also I loved the new actress playing the younger Guinan. I don't know her, but I was that was exciting for me. I was thinking about it in season 1. The crew was arguably much more outlaw. They were going against Starfleet, sneaking out under the radar, and putting together a ragtag crew. And now they're all basically aligned with Starfleet, and I like it more. I know that that's not necessarily they're not like on a Starfleet mission right now, but I like that they're still being these sort of outlaws that they were, but the reason that they're coming across that way is because they've got this sort of advanced morality that they've developed by the 25th century, and they're clashing it with our 21st century morality. And so I like that makes them outlaws again. It's a format that works for Trek and feels very real to the times we live in. I like that I feel like they're picking the right enemies. Other than a few minor complaints here and there, this is as on board as I've been probably the Picard in seasons 1 and 2.
Very cool. Well, Brian, what about you?
I will observe that there is no Starfleet for them to be a part of either last week or this week.
That's true.
Or the week before that. So,
but there's Starfleet through and through in their hearts.
yeah, but couldn't you say that about season 1?
I suppose so, but I guess what I found was them being rogue Starfleet is kind of boring to me. Them being true Starfleet and juxtaposing it against our present times is interesting to me.
Okay. I like this one a lot. I was very embarrassed that I was so busy pondering issues of Mark Twain at the end that I totally did not catch up on the actually fairly big clues about what the Watchers were at the end of the episode until Fatheree pointed it out to me afterwards. So I feel really stupid for not catching that.
Shameful.
Yes, very shameful, especially given that the Aegis, the supervisors, is actually absolutely my thing. It is something I wrote. I did a 9-year Star Trek role-playing game that focused very heavily on that organization throughout the run of it. So yeah, I'm really embarrassed. It's yeah.
for people who don't know, they're called Aegis and like some of like the non-canonical stuff.
Yeah. Well, depending on how you parse the sentence, they say they call themselves that in Assignment Earth, but
right, it's just a question of whether it's a proper noun or
just
an adjective,
a bit of a flowery prose.
Yeah, a noun or whatever.
Yeah. Is it flowery prose or is it a name? It's not terribly clear from how it is delivered in the episode. You can interpret it either way. Since they didn't give any other name, that was the one I went with in my role playing game. I will say this episode had all sorts of big surprises for me. And a lot of, I felt like going into this episode that I had a fairly good grip on things. There were some big questions, but I felt like I had a pretty good grip on this season of Picard, and I kind of had a feel for how it was going to unfold. And I kind of felt like I more or less had a pretty good guess about where it was going. And by the end of this episode, I was just completely what the fuck. I'm like, not in a bad way, but just like, okay, clearly there are far more moving parts in this story than I was expecting. And some of those new moving parts that that were hidden under the hood or beneath the bushes or whatever up until now, all became apparent in this episode, and I realized things are a whole nother level of complicated, and it did leave me reeling a bit. So yeah, but I like that. I was literally thinking, this is fun, but my God, there's a lot of nostalgia porn in here. And even arguably, some of the twists are nostalgia porn, but it feels like we're going to do something with the supervisors or the Watchers or whatever, rather than just name check them. It feels like we're going to learn more about them in the same way that we learned more about the Romulans in the previous season. And so I feel like that's not so much of a Gorn egg as an actual development of an idea from the show. So yes, I'm very excited. I guess there's a small part of me that's like, what if they do it worse than you did it? And but overall, I'm very interested.
Are you looking forward to them doing that so you can celebrate the triumph, or would it feel sad to you?
It would make me feel sad because it would mean that it probably would also mean that my game is even less canonical than it was before this the season aired. But yes, I am very excited to see what they do with it. It was fun. It was great. There were some great laughs. I honestly, there were two places where I laughed harder than most episodes of Lower Decks in this episode. So it was fun.
Cool. Well, for me, I am still really digging the show. I still like this episode. I did not like it quite as much as the first three. And I think that's just because the pacing that I've been praising the show so much, kind of that fast pace, that purposeful pace, as I've been calling it, it does kind of slow down a bit here, where each of those first three episodes was moving to something different. We go from the year 20 401 and the Stargazer to, oh, we're in the alternate timeline where everything's terrible, to we're gone back in time to 2024, and here we're still back in time at 2024. So it didn't have like that big shift, so it's kind of like, we're driving down the road at kind of a quick pace, and then we were slowing down, like go around a curve or something a little bit here. So I felt like the energy was a little bit deflated. That's not really necessarily a criticism, just I wasn't as pumped watching this one. All of that being said, though, I still, like I mentioned, having a good time. The thing that I really appreciate Star Trek doing in this episode that is something that I don't get out of like Marvel movies, for example, even though like I love those movies, but the anti-authority, the anti-establishment type of story they're able to craft here, where they actually like label like real world institutions, like the United States Department of Homeland Security, like they're the actual antagonists that our heroes have to find a way to overcome these obstacles of them and actually like go against them. And I think that's something that Star Trek, often it doesn't have like that anti-establishment type story. Prodigy does it by, having the kids rebel against the Diviner. And I think Star Trek still kind of finds ways, sometimes you have to steal the Enterprise and go rescue Spock. But yeah, here is like having it be like 2024, like the establishment of 2024 is basically like the bad guys here. That was a lot of fun for me. I really enjoyed that. It's just something that like I really look for in my fiction now, because I kind of get tired of like all of these stories of like, like the hero of the story still has to, be part of our society and our systems and our authority that we have in place, which is very often not actually good for the little guy. I was surprised to see Guinan recast, but the more I watch this episode, the more I love, I think her name is Ito Aghayeri. But I liked her performance. I wouldn't mind seeing more of her, actually, and I think we'll get more of her later this season. The Borg Queen stuff continues to be a lot of fun for me. She's a great presence on the show, and I really feel like in this episode, they've fully recaptured the spirit of that character from Star Trek First Contact in these scenes with Alison Pill. And Alison Pill continues to remind me just how much of a fantastic asset she has been this season. And yeah, I like seeing Orla Brady back, or Laris back, or whatever is going on there. And we're getting into like some Assignment Earth type stuff with the Watchers or the supervisors and all that. So yeah, by the end of this episode, I was so like, oh my god, I got to see what happens next. And so far every episode has kind of ended with where I'm just so excited to come back next week and plug back in and see what's going to be the next chapter in this 10 episode story, or maybe I don't know what will be resolved. It might take till we get done with season 3 before some of this stuff wraps. I don't know, because they shot them both back to back, but we'll find out.
I can't imagine them, or like none of the newer Treks have truly spread out between multiple seasons, have they?
Not really. I mean, I guess like Discovery kind of took 2 years to rebuild the Federation, but
that'd be wild if they did. I kind of hope they don't.
No, I think the time travel specific stuff will all be wrapped up with the end of season 2, but we'll find out in the weeks to come. But let's just go ahead and go break down this episode and talk about it beat by beat, starting with the Picard and Jurati stuff at the beginning of the episode. We open with the two of them. They're hanging back on the ship. They're trying to figure out what happened to Rios, and for some reason, the ship, the heater on the ship is not working, but it can still run the cloaking device. That was peculiar. But they go onto the.
It's possible that the heater is still is broken and needs to be repaired, and because they're in a Class M environment, it's pretty low on the things to fix list.
Sure, I wasn't actually that concerned about it. I was just I just thought it was funny to call attention to that.
But the sort of matter-antimatter reactor power levels you need to run a cloaking device should generate loads of excess heat. If the air conditioning system is down, the ship should be too hot, not too cold, because where is all that heat going?
Yeah, that was the thing I was thinking about. Like, it should actually be kind of hard to keep a spaceship cool. But anyway,
Especially on Earth, when you don't have the vacuum of space to radiate into, and
yeah.
the atmosphere
Even in space, they're
yeah.
kind of hard to keep cool because you don't
Yeah.
have anything to pull the energy off. But
who knows how cloaking devices have changed by the 25th century?
we get not really questions answered, but maybe like a little bit more context about what's going on with Picard and the chateau and the memories he's having of his mother and whatever thing they keep having flashbacks of there. But yeah, we see something in like this, I guess it's a green room with plants. At some point, like young Picard throws a rock and breaks the glass of the green room, and his mom used what's that French singer Edith Piaf
Oh yeah.
or Edith. I think it's
Edith.
supposed to be Edette is the French way of saying it.
Yeah, I'm afraid I would only butcher it. So, but yeah, it looks like Edith Piaf.
I don't know if we needed the explanation of why Picard is a Frenchman with an English accent, but his family has ties to both France and England, it sounds like. So I guess cool. I do hate that, like, for so many decades, people are like, why does this French guy have a British accent? So I guess now we can tell them, here's your reason.
Yeah, I think it was probably just one of those things. They're like, you know what, we could just work that in pretty easily. And it did come out pretty naturally. They were talking about family history.
Yeah, I don't know why the Nazis were going to kill his family, because I don't think Picard is Jewish, but maybe they were like part of the resistance or something.
Yeah, they could have been intellectuals or dissenters or, who knows.
But yeah, so we have like this, I don't know what you call that, Franco-Anglo family history of the Picards, but I think that's going to come into play later in the season. I think there's a lot of stuff to explore with the Picard family line that they're getting into here. The whole idea of Jurati having like the number 15 stuck in her head, that kind of reminded me of Cause and Effect, when Data kept subconsciously thinking of the number 3 so that they could stop Kelsey Grammer from blowing up.
Yeah, I did think of that too.
But yeah, we learned what that 15 means. Remember, we were thinking like maybe she meant like Watcher 15 last week, but no, it's like April 15th is when the big event that changes history, which is also tax day here in the United States. So I don't know if the IRS is involved or what.
I did, again, the gamer in me was like, dude, if you just need some relay satellites, reprogram a few communicators. Apparently it looks like you do have a bunch of those. If you've got all these racks of phasers, you probably have a box of communicators somewhere on board. And beam the communicators into orbit, and then they can act as relays. Yes, you'd have to work out the orbital dynamics and velocities, but Jurati should be able to do that well, with one hand tied behind her back. So, yeah, but Jurati does find a solution. She finds a way to boost the signal. So we get there in the end. It was just not the solution I would have used.
Michael L in our live audience is asking, correct me if I'm wrong, the song Picard's mom plays for him is the same song that played during the Borg Queen on the Stargazer in episode 1, right? And that is correct. It's like the No Regrets or something. It has a French name to it, but it's a song of like No, I Have No Regrets or something like that is in the lyrics.
Where did it play in the first episode?
When the Borg Queen is taking over the Stargazer, Picard hears that music playing when he's activating the self-destruct.
Is it meant to actually be like something that's like audible?
I think
is it like internal?
I think Picard could hear it.
Interesting.
I guess I'd also add Jurati's solution has the benefit of not scattering Starfleet communicators all through space, which always a plus in a time travel stories. So yeah, I did like the flashback. I'm curious to know what more of yeah. Are we going to get any? Is the whole Nazis in Chateau Picard thing going to be developed anymore? Or do you think that was just a little bit of?
I think that's just color.
Flavor?
Yeah. Color. Just to explain why his family lived in England for a few generations. When he says it'll be generations before the Picards return. No, the exact line. It will be generations before the Picards reside here again. It made me think it'll be until Star Trek Generations until they reside here again, and then
Yeah,
I'll
I did
die in a
think about
fire.
that. I did think about that a little.
Weren't they there in a family?
Yeah, and we obviously see Picard here as a little boy, but
Yeah.
But I do think that primarily this will, these scenes are, continuing the flashback vehicle that's going to reveal whatever we're going to learn about Picard's childhood and some sort of maybe domestic abuse or, but whatever trouble the family had that still affects him.
It's weird to me to have like Picard be from like this long line of like aristocratic people who have like this huge like estate that's like been passed down through the generations. But that's kind of already been like implied when they've talked about how long the Picards have had the vineyard, and then his family history book that they talk about in Generations, and he has like that photo album. He talks about like all the great things his family has done, and also the first episode of the season when he talks about his family history and all the great Picards who did all this incredible stuff throughout the years. So it tracks. It's just kind of
What's weird about it to you?
Just like rooting for like a guy who like comes from like this like very
aristocrat.
privileged background, but
Yeah,
it's not a big deal.
I think in Picard's head, he also feels that there's it seems like there's a certain like hands-on quality to their running a vineyard that they also took in.
Yeah.
But like Picard is he is a privileged guy. I think he would probably be able to admit that and has maybe at some point. But now that I think about it, I'm not 100% sure.
I mean, there's pretty much everyone in the Federation in the 24th century is wildly privileged by the standards of today, but yeah, Picard seems to have a history of privilege rather than just being a side effect of growing up in the Federation. He does get called on it before this episode is out, so that happens. They I guess I always figured he just. He seemed to be written from day one back in 1987 as this guy who probably had a bunch of oil paintings of famous Picards going back through history. It didn't really surprise me that it would have been more surprising to me if we'd learned something else different, like that they were
the notion of
bandits and pirates or something.
The notion of embracing bloodlines and stuff like that, that's where I start to be like, I don't like that, Picard. Could you please throw that in the fucking trash? But that said, I do like his interaction with Jurati in these scenes. Didn't she like sort of profile him and say like, oh, were you the little kid with all the books and stuff like that?
And then she says that he was being like a good Dixon Hill, like piecing together like all the 15s and stuff. I like their chemistry. I like that she calls him Mister. I've heard her do that before, but I don't know. I think they have a cool friendship.
Yeah, I like it.
And he doesn't interact with many civilians unless they're like a love interest. So it's kind of unique to see like Picard and someone who's like not his subordinate
deigning to speak to somebody who's not of his bloodline. On a purely sort of just atmospheric level, I like the kind of quiet hush of the night and them sneaking around and making a fire. It's a very sort of modern, if anything, pre-modern kind of idea. It's intimate and it's a good stage for kind of conversations that maybe dig a little bit deeper. And it's also just a good pacing break from running around in brightly lit cities.
Yeah.
Cool.
Did they? I guess we're supposed to assume the wine was found there was a hidden, what do they call it? Where hidden wine storage somewhere in the chateau.
It did seem a little unlikely that just some bottles would just be left.
I mean,
look
at this place. There's clearly a bunch of teenagers have broken in there and gone through this.
There's people who tend the property that Picard mentioned that like someone like comes in once a month. And
teenagers are breaking in here and
I mean, could be
and stuff.
I don't know what the
stealing
kinds
and drinking
of
the wine.
Brian's like, how dare they step on the foot of this ancient bloodline?
I'm fine with them breaking in and stealing the wine. I'm just surprised there's any wine left.
The crazy teenagers of Labar, France in 2024.
Yeah, well, maybe they tried the wine and they're like, this is crap.
Let's talk about
Too
the
bougie.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
let's talk about the opening title sequence. They gave us a new opening title sequence for season 2, and we haven't had time to talk about it because we've been having to cover Picard and Discovery both at the same time. So we get like a little bit of a new theme song here. They changed the score a little bit. They kind of made it like a little bit more energetic and exciting for this little bit more, I guess, action adventure-y season that they're doing this year. And they have visuals of like that painted glass of the green room breaking, and then they marry that with the footage from last year's sequence where it had the glass, floating down in the vineyard. And instead of the Borg cube, we get the new Borg ship. I've heard a lot of people call it like the Borg vagina ship. So that's
Freud was right. He was right.
I don't know.
It's everywhere.
Why Star Trek fans have such dirty minds, but no, I can see the
Sure.
I can see the parallel there.
Yeah.
We have the I forgot what this thing's called, but the way that the synths were created, Soji and Dodge were created in season 1, where there's that particle, that neuron or whatever that splits.
Mm-hmm.
So
Fatheree, you want to throw up? You want to throw up Geek Filter's last comment there?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Our friend Aaron is calling it the Borgina. I guess is how you would pronounce that.
Yeah, I think you might want to hit it as Borgina. I don't. Anyway.
There's the next Warp 11 song if they haven't already done that.
Yeah, that's a good one for Warp 11. If you don't know them, go check out that band. We see some weird little maze-looking cylindrical thing that I have no idea what it is, but maybe it will reveal itself later in the season. We see footage of La Sirena flying back in time through an hourglass that also reveals the face of the Borg Queen, and then we end with more floating glass that's assumed the shape of the Starfleet Delta, and then we have Picard reassembling like how we had in season 1. So
that hourglass looked like it was initially formed of sort of, if I'm not mistaken, it's kind of a vector graphics that look like when they show the mathematic visual properties of like a black hole and bent space-time. Yeah, there it is. That's what it looks like. So yeah, it looks like a space-time anomaly visualized with sort of vector-type graphics, and then transitioning to an hourglass, which is neat little trick.
Yeah. It worked. I appreciated that. I was like, oh, look, they've got kind of a wormhole looking vector graphic, and then they're also using it to show that an hourglass and wormhole time travel, hourglass, black hole, gravity force, all of that kind of rolled together. So
I hadn't noticed actually
thought.
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
Oh wait, you go first.
I was just going to mention I hadn't noticed that the music had actually changed. I noticed I was like, that's the melody I think I remember, and I hadn't noticed the change though.
I was going to say I didn't notice the music change either, but I did feel like this was the right music for season 1, but I feel like this music is way too melancholy for season 2. Season 2 is a lot of things, but melancholy isn't one of the emotions I'm getting really much out of this season. It feels much more.
Picard is melancholy.
Is he?
Yeah, he was just having a melancholy.
Like he's bouncing between bitter and desperate.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah, he
felt
not as melancholy
this...
as he was in season 1.
Yeah,
in fact, I would say that was
this episode.
The arc of season 1, when he learned like not to just sit on his chateau and be sad. He has to, stay engaged. No pun intended, but he has to stay engaged with what's going on. And, but yeah, I don't have anything else on the opening titles, so I think we should just delve back into the episode and talk about, now that we have the dramatic ticking clock. I always like to point out when they have like a dramatic ticking clock, we only have 3 days to fix this, to stop history from going terribly in the wrong direction. So Picard takes it upon himself to go seek out the Watcher, and the coordinates Jurati got takes him to 10 Forward Avenue, Los Angeles, which is Guinan's bar in the 24th century, and apparently Guinan's bar in the 21st century. And we meet our young Guinan, which How did y'all? Dave, you mentioned that you really liked her performance. I guess Brian, what did you think about the recasting of Guinan here?
I definitely, because I hadn't mentally prepared myself for it the way, say, I had when I went in to see Star Trek 11. I definitely took me, whoa, I was reeling a bit from the shock of it, of the recasting in a way that was a bit disorienting. Though, as I said, I kind of found this whole episode to be a bit shockingly disorienting. But yeah, no, she's fine, especially on second viewing when I was able to go in fully expecting a surprise new Guinan. I wanted her to have a big hat when she left her bar, that she puts on a big sun hat or something, and that
would have been a nice touch.
Yeah.
So if I'm not well, go ahead, Brian.
I suspect that she has lost her joy and cannot wear the joy in big hats is not something.
Right. You have to be pretty serene to pull off a big hat.
Yes. Yeah. Big hat and shotgun is, I guess if it's a cowboy hat, you can probably get it to work.
And so if I'm not mistaken, the episode everybody's been talking about, which I haven't seen in a long time, was it Time Zero?
Yes.
Is that it? That had Whoopi Goldberg just playing herself in the past, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
In the 1800s.
There was also in 1992 when Whoopi Goldberg would have been like, I don't know, 35.
Right.
So it's
here's the thing is, like, can technology de-age you if they want to? Yes. Is it always a little bit of a spectacle that can be distracting if it's done it all wrong? Also, yes. I'm almost always in favor of just casting people who close enough resemblance and let them make the character their own. Yeah. And I thought she did. I thought she tapped into kind of like a discontent, an anger that I really liked. And I thought she had a good physical presence. I just, I pretty much bought into it after just a few seconds, I think. But I also don't have the tight ties that y'all do to Star Trek. I don't rewatch it at that level.
It was a little jarring at first, but it made sense to me immediately, because I was kind of thinking Guinan's not going to be the watcher, because they're not going to say she's a listener and a watcher. They wouldn't call it a watcher. I refuse to believe she was the watcher. But I was like, they've shown footage of Picard returning to this 10 Forward location, but I don't think they're going to de-age Whoopi Goldberg, because I think it'd be particularly harder to do. In her case, she'd have to be de-aged several decades, and she's been having to take steroids for medical reasons lately, and she's like gained weight, and it would just be hard to like make her look the same as she looked. So I was like, they're not gonna do that. It might be like one of her, I don't know, like associates is running 10 Forward or something while she's gone or something like that. But then I was like, oh, they just like recast with a younger actress. And there's a few times where like kind of like the delivery of some lines or something, it feels very Guinan. I think where it runs the risk of like almost losing me is that she feels very human, doesn't feel like a wise old alien. However, given the story they're telling, it kind of makes sense that she's been on Earth long enough. She's kind of like gone native, and she's also just, so frustrated with 2024 society, and that she's not the wise old alien. She's just kind of like bitter alien who wants to leave.
There was a part of me that, like, when you imitate somebody, like, say, who played Obi-Wan Kenobi in the prequels? Ewan McGregor.
Ewan McGregor.
Right. So when you do something like that, the very quickest way to get people on board is to try and absorb some vocal inflections and affectations, and kind of and do that so that you remind them. So she wasn't doing that precisely because, yes, she seems to be disillusioned. And a part of me did sort of wish, like, if she had been a little closer in temperament to the Guinan we know, then they could have done a little bit more of that, and I think it would have been a little bit of a smoother transition. But as you say, Father, that's not the story they're telling. They're telling the story of a person who, on TNG, seemed to have infinite patience, running out of patience.
Yeah. Was she? But I don't. My recollection was that she wasn't very Zen or Yoda-ish in 1893.
No, in Time Zero, she was a bit like juvenile. She's kind of like adolescent. She's like, "Don't tell my dad that I'm here. Did he send you to come get me?"
Oh, really?
I'm having fun hanging out with Mark Twain.
Yeah, so if you trace the data points, she probably, this
Okay.
is a much more plausible portrayal. She's got a few centuries yet to become wise and
Right, she
zen.
could be the equivalent of a late teen or 20 something or something
Yeah, this
like
is
that.
the disillusioned 20 something. Whereas the 1890
That actually
Although
fits pretty well.
yeah.
I should say I was surprised when I found out how young the actor playing Guinan here is, because she definitely like played it with like a little bit of maturity, but I found out like when she was born, I was like, oh, 1992, like she's a bit younger than me. I was like, that's weird for Guinan to be younger than me, I guess. But like but
Time
anyways,
is the fire in which we burn, Fatheree.
indeed. The elephant in the room, or the Horta in the room, or whatever you want to call it. Picard met Guinan in the 1800s. Why does she not remember him? Now, Terry Matalas, the showrunner, has explained this. I think he told Vulture or somebody online, but he said, because of the Confederation future, those events of Time Zero never took place, so this Guinan has never met Picard, and because they give it a name here, the Afkelt, the time sickness, because that has been affecting her. She's kind of a little off kilter, so it kind of explains her being a little out of character, anyways. Because I guess the alteration in the timeline actually goes all the way back to the 1800s. Now there's another dude who's encountered time travelers that we're going to talk about in this episode. I think that it's kind of harder to use that Confederation timeline explanation for Guinan when the punk on the bus still seemed to have met Kirk and Spock. The only thing I can think of is that evil Kirk must have still taken Spock back in time, because they still had to deal with the whale probe, and so Spock still gave that dude a nerve pinch. That's the only explanation I can think of.
You think in the evil version they went back, got the whale, brought it out, got the probe to go away, killed the whale?
Yeah, they like harvested its blubber or something.
No, they probably used the whales to lure the probe into a trap and then blew it up.
Oh yeah, that's what they did. They couldn't overpower it otherwise. But and they, even though they're racist against aliens, they needed someone as smart as Spock. So you'd be like, well, at least he's half human. We'll take him. He's smart enough to do the time warp equation. So it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think that's as good a headcanon as we're probably going to get on
If
that
you got
point.
better than that, let us know.
Yeah. I did think Guinan is moving and she's not taking her dog. Guinan's an asshole, but
It's
You
not
can't take
usually
dogs off world. Like
it's not usually a cool thing to do, to leave your pet behind.
yeah,
like
it's
that.
not cool. Not cool. So yeah, she definitely was like, wow, I don't know if Earth did this to her or if she was just always the sort of person who dumps her animals
to be
when she
fair,
moves,
to be
but-
fair, they spent a few seconds of screen time showing that she was responsible enough of a dog owner to hand the dog off to someone who seemed to be like he'd be a good caregiver.
You'll have to excuse
Uncle
me,
Del.
Picard. I have to go put this thing to sleep.
No, that's not what happened. That's probably like the alien, freighter captain who's like going to come like beam her up from Earth. He's probably like, well, yeah, like I'm not going to take like this weird Earth creature with, I don't know if this thing's like safe to take off world.
As a animal guy, I do kind of wish that it seemed like maybe a little more difficult for her. But, Elarians are listeners. Maybe they're not pet people.
She does burst into tears like immediately after that when she's
Did she?
Yeah, when she's like, but she's
right.
talking about how like it's so hard, watching this, being the listener, being an Elorian, having to observe like just like this world go to shed. How it's all these people want to do is fight. It's a pressure cooker. It's something terrible is about to happen. Which World War III is about to happen in the show, possibly in real life too.
Thinking is Picard's going to keep his mouth shut about that one.
Yeah, he doesn't say anything. He just listens to her.
He doesn't try, and it gets better. He's like, oh, well,
He kind of he on an abstract level he did say humanity's finding its way or something like that.
It's finding its way to a nuclear holocaust.
he's otherwise I guess he's being pretty good with Prime Directive E type stuff, as good as you can be in a Star Trek story.
I did feel like Like, I mean, when he finally does share his name with her, it clearly somehow, just how we know they can remember alternate timelines. She reacts to that name on a powerful level. Like that name rings a bell. So she can, which has kind of had me wondering, why didn't Picard lead with that?
Well, he's trying to not violate the timeline, I guess, any more than he has to, which still kind of doesn't make sense because. Yeah, she's supposed to already know him by this point.
Yeah, in Time Zero, he's quite happy to explain who he is to that Guinan, but here he's like, "Oh, I don't want to mess things up," even though everything is already messed up, and telling her would actually push things closer to the right timeline.
You could just as easily, though, make an argument that because he doesn't know what's going on, what strings are being pulled in the timeline. In this particular case, they're particularly chaotic. That he's feeling his way out before he takes that risk. He's gonna see, does she recognize me? Is she going to be revealed to be the Watcher or direct me to the Watcher? Do I need to reveal this yet? I can understand the caution. It doesn't bug me too much as like a plot contrivance.
I guess it was just the lack of caution in Time's Arrow, but compared to this, felt jarring. But
these guys can't be responsible for a storyline from 30 years ago.
It could be seen as he's just playing the cards close to the chest and only revealing them when he needs to reveal them, rather than just slamming them down on the table and saying I win. But
I did like they before we get into Picard dropping his name, and then that kind of changes the whole conversation. But before that, some of the points that she's bringing up, I like that they just actually called a spade and said some of the real life terrible things, like when she says there's people that are wealthy enough they could solve a lot of these problems, but they just won't. They don't want to. And she says, it's a lot easier to be on this planet if somebody looks like you than someone who looks like me. And, acknowledges there's a lot of racial issues, and not just in America, but, in most of the world, but specifically, in America. And it's not the easiest place for a black woman. So they actually, instead of just hinting at some of this stuff, they just go out and flat out say it.
It's more overt than Trek gets sometimes. A lot of times Trek traffics in metaphor. Here they're just calling it. Fatheree, do you mind putting up Bryce Burchett's comments?
Oh, sure. Thank you, Bryce, for the subscription on YouTube. We appreciate it.
Very awesome. He writes, I agree with Guinan's comments on society, poverty, racism, but makes me wonder what made her stay on Earth all that time. Why did she not leave long ago? It's true, she's gone through several world wars at that point. I mean, I guess she might have just hit some tipping point. Maybe she sees that World War III on the horizon, or senses it. But you cannot doubt that we've got at that point millennia of atrocities.
Yeah, that is a great point, and it's something I thought about. But I think there is also kind of a great delusion among a lot of people that, hey, things have gotten so much better. We're every decade, a lot of the problems with society improve and get better and better and better. And I think a lot of people have thought that, but there's actually some things that have gotten worse. I think a lot of issues, economic issues have gotten worse with the wealth gap and the concentration of wealth into a certain segment of the population. And
technology has certainly made it easier, like certain types of economic exploitation easier and kind of become ingrained.
But and we don't know if she's been on Earth this whole time. I kind of get the impression she has, but it's possible she might have left and come back, or she finally just the 2020s. I can buy that. Just I've only existed the 80s, 90s, and then the 21st century, but just within that time period, I can be here lately it seems particularly kind of.
She saw the Trump presidency and she's like, I got to get the fuck out.
Is that what it was? Is that the straw that broke the camel's back?
That was it. It wasn't a specific war or anything. It was that buffoon.
Trump won a second term. That was it. All over.
Well, that's very likely to happen in real life, unfortunately. But But when he reveals his name to her, that's when she's just like she even says oh, shit, immediately, and she just comes clean. The Watchers, they're these supervisors, they're trying to guide planets and to make sure like certain destinies come true and stuff. And if you're familiar with Assignment Earth, they're definitely going into like that Gary 7 territory.
It's been so long since I've watched it. I really wanted to watch it before this podcast, and I didn't get a chance to. I will say I kind of cringe about things like Destiny. I don't like prophecies and Destiny very much in science fiction unless it's a big part of like what the whole themes of the show are or something. And so I want to watch that and see how they're presented. Remind myself how it's presented.
Well, it's like manufactured Destiny. Like these aliens have like taken it upon themselves. Like they know like the correct course. In their, you could say like in their hubris, but in their minds, like they're trying to like push planets into what they think is best for them.
The idea of them watching specific individuals, I'm pretty sure that's not in Assignment Earth at all. I mean, there's a whole lot of unanswered questions about them, so it's not like it contradicts anything. But I don't think Gary at any point, Gary 7, the supervisor we see, ever alludes to having a particular interest in a particular person as part of his job. That felt like a bit of a new continuity to me, which is fine, but it was they always, my impression was that they were interested in society, the broad societies and cultures on a broad level as opposed to individuals. But I'm sure we'll get more explained about how that works. Though I do, any speculations onto who as to who Gary 7 might have been watching back in the 60s.
I don't know if he was necessarily like watching an individual. His mission there was to stop nuclear war between Russia and the United States. We kind of need a Gary 7 now to watch over us and make sure that doesn't happen. So he might have just been like watching societies or like, watching like nation states or something. Might have been like because he was a class 1 or like level 1 supervisor. So he might have been like the upper
big picture
level
guy.
Yeah, the big picture guy.
Yeah.
I did think it was cool that they mentioned before, like, oh yeah, the Watcher is like at these coordinates near like what is it? MacArthur Park, right? That's the name of the park that they're at. Yeah. And then here, like, we actually like go to the park to see the to meet the Watcher and the weird like mind control body jumping thing.
Yeah. Speaking of coordinates, I was vaguely surprised that Picard didn't bother to look at the coordinates on a map of Los Angeles and say, hey, wait a minute, that's right outside 10 forward when he had Jurati beam him over. He didn't bother to just throw the coordinates on a map and look at LA and say, wait a minute, I know that street.
Yeah. How familiar is he with Los Angeles? Like, for all we know, that's like the only place in LA he's ever been to. So
yeah, but
is that where Dixon Hill takes place?
Dixon Hill's in San Francisco.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's another case. Obviously, on at least one major level, it's probably because it's dramatic to see him look up, see the sign, and we make the same connection at the same time as he does of where he is.
I guess I would have written it as Picard knows where he's going, but he doesn't tell Jurati, and he's all kind of mischievously smug about, don't worry, I'll be okay. And she's like, are you sure? It's dangerous. 21st century assholes out there. No. I know where we're beaming. I'll be fine. Just energize. And then the audience is like, what? What does he know? What does he know? And then we beam up and see the sign and he smiles. And I don't know. That's how I would have done it, but whatever. Are we cool with Gary 7 running around mind controlling little girls? Because that was not a side of his character that we saw at all.
Well, I don't think it's Gary 7. I think it's a different Watcher or a different supervisor.
It's the same organization with so.
We don't know enough about Gary 7. I don't know if he might be a questionable dude. I don't know enough to
As presented,
to judge him.
It seemed creepy at first, but I guess could also be written off as relatively benign. I mean, we just forgave the 10C aliens for knocking out whole worlds, and these guys seem to just be, for dramatic purposes, possessing people for like 10 seconds.
They do take the time to show the audience that when the possession is over, when it's done, the person just walks off, normal, goes about their day.
Yeah,
mostly unaffected. So
right, so they may just be like a little, but it does speak to like I don't know, maybe a little sort of authoritarianism or like maybe a little overreach. At the very least, it seems unnerving.
But it makes you question this character that Orla Brady is playing here, this human Laris or whatever she is. Because I don't know. Is she going to be trouble? Is she going to be good? Is she going to be bad?
I suspect that, like Gary Seven, she's going to butt heads with our heroes, whether even if they might both be on a broad level have the same agenda.
Well, that would be the most dramatic. So I think that is, if it is obvious, but probably the best way to go.
That actress is getting to do more stuff than I expected. Aside from the possible love interest with Picard in episode 1 and getting to like kick some ass in season 1, now we maybe an antagonist or some sort of intriguing ally. If so, like she's getting to do some cool stuff.
Yeah, her American accent sounds a little weird to me, but we didn't hear much of it, so. But yeah, she has a different voice, different mannerisms, and clearly no different face without the pointed ears or Romulan eyebrows. So yeah, it's a big mystery.
Yeah, I mean, we could learn that Laris in the 24th century is also a member of a supervisor who was watching Picard because he's important.
Or she could be a shapeshifter like Gary Seven's cat, Isis.
Yeah.
Or this could be Isis for all we know.
I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, you're right. That would have been a easy dot to connect if they wanted to. So yeah, I am overall still very stoked to see the supervisors, or the Aegis, or the Aegis, however you want to say it, which I checked. Both are proper pronunciations apparently, but
they don't say that in canon though, so I feel like we should hold off on saying that until they say it.
I agree. Stick with supervisorism, or watchers appears to be a much more official term for them, but I'm glad to see they're back in some fashion, and I'm looking forward to seeing more about them. And I wonder if this could spin off into finally getting Assignment Earth, the TV show.
They could do that. Yeah, they could do like Star Trek Assignment Earth. You know, we're finally getting the show that the Cage was made to pitch. So now they can do the Assignment Earth show as well. Those are options on the table.
And then what next? Phase 2? Are we going to get Phase 2? Would be the other Star Trek show that didn't happen.
The rejected animated series from like 20 years ago. They could do that one next.
I remember. Yeah.
Everything old is new again. That's all stuff that R&D has already happened on. Perfect to make happen.
Anything else on Picard's story in this episode before we talk about Seven and Raffi and Rios?
I liked seeing him get out. I was at a certain point I was thinking, oh, he's a little bit of the man in the chair, and as far as his role in this story until now. So it was nice to see him actually become an active landing party kind of guy in this episode. So that was a bit of energy for me. I think, Fatheree, you're right that this is like wasn't as big a swerve as some of the previous episodes were as they proceeded to each subsequent one, but I still found it like a highly energetic episode, not just because it had like a car chase in it, but also I think seeing Picard get out of the ship was cool.
Cool.
Jurati can handle that Borg Queen all by herself. She doesn't need any backup.
She might. She might.
Let's talk about Seven and Raffi and their quest to find Rios. They go from the clinic his comm badge was at to a ride on the bus and meet the punk on the bus, and then they end up at the police department and end up in a police car. I gotta say that I love all of the little, nods and Easter eggs and stuff that they put in here. And it makes like doing the Gorn Egg section of our show fun when we go over all the Easter eggs, in jokes, and continuity connections at the end of the podcast. But I kind of thought this was like a little too cute at first. The punk on the bus. I love seeing them, but I mean, like, really, this guy is doing the same thing 35 years later. He just went from San Francisco to LA, but he's still like riding around public buses, listening to his boombox.
Your instinct was right. It's too cute.
I laughed my ass off more than just about any joke in Lower Decks. I know it doesn't quite make sense with the fact that Guinan doesn't remember the Mark Twain meeting, but I still thought it was hilarious. And I love that he learned a lesson, and I love that it was a slightly different song. And it was, I had to rewind it and rewatch it again when I saw
Apparently Terry Metalis has commented on this. I saw a comment in our live audience. Maybe our backstage engineer can find it and throw it up for us. Here we go. So Cerulean Blue. Hi, Cerulean Blue. Thanks for joining us tonight. But Cerulean Blue says, Terry Metalis just replied this to a tweet saying, guy on the bus incident was literally a vague after image in a hammy bit of fan service to explain the timeline difference. So he's like having like, I guess like visions. I guess like the punk on the bus somehow like he's aware of timelines a little bit. Like maybe he has some Elurian DNA, but yeah, he like detected like this, like something like this happened in like another timeline. Maybe I should
use
turn
of
this
punk
down.
rock and drugs will open you to
Yeah.
the time to the mysteries of time and space.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I want to go with like the stereotype that all punks out there must be like doing a lot of experimental psychedelic drugs or something. But I mean,
No
it is
judgment if
possible.
they are. I'm fine with it.
Uh, Aaron in our audience, he's saying, "Have you met old school punks?" So yeah,
No, actually.
perhaps. Um, but yeah, I could definitely see like a dude, I guess, who's been doing this for a lot. It just seemed like a big coincidence that he runs into like another time traveler 35 years later, listening to almost the same song. It is,
I mean-
it is an updated version of the song. It is I
think-
hate you instead of I hate you.
I think this is one of those that, like, yeah, on like some gut level, it either like amuses you to no end, or you're like a little bit groaning at it. And I was a little bit groaning at it, but it's so minor that I also I'm glad y'all enjoyed it. Y'all, that's cool.
I would say I'm split on it. I can see either side of it. But what I did like more than that, though, is actually the emotional moment between Seven and Raffi, where they take the time to show Raffi still grieving Elnor, and then Seven, trying to be like supportive and comforter. And I like that. Oh yeah, they're doing all this fun action adventure stuff, and they're quipping back and forth to each other, but they still take the time to slow down and breathe for a moment and deal with the emotional weight of what happened in the previous episodes.
Yeah, I agree too. I've liked their stuff, whether it was the slightly sort of lighthearted moment in the previous episode where they're feigned doing a sort of a meet cute reunion photo or something, to the car chase in this one, but also the more serious stuff. They forwarded past their relationship on the show, so we've only seen the lead up to it and the aftermath of their sort of awkward breakup or quasi breakup, but like I actually think they're handling it pretty well.
They ever broke up. I think they just Raffi wanted to get more serious than Seven did, so they're kind of in limbo.
Yeah, well, at the very least, it became a long distance relationship.
Yeah.
At the point at which she went back to the Fenris Rangers. But yeah, like it's I think at the end of the first season, I was like, oh, that's interesting. It looks like they're together. I don't know if I quite see it, but sure. And now that we're exploring it, again, having missed the heart of the relationship, it does feel like they have this history, and I believe it. I like it.
Yeah, they have good chemistry.
Yeah. No, I loved pretty much all of their duo stuff as they work their way through Los Angeles together. Almost every scene with them was just a lot of fun or interesting or emotional or thought provoking. I mean, yeah, I really, arguably the stuff they did in this episode is the stuff that would be the easiest to edit out. And just say, oh, look, I found Rios, and cut straight to where they're about to ambush the bus. And,
right.
But so you could arguably say, oh, this is all irrelevant, but it was also the stuff that I think I liked the most character wise in this episode. I just love seeing those two actors bump into each other again and again as they spar and nitpick each other and try to help each other. And all of that. I liked all of it. It was great. I guess we can assume that Tom Paris taught Seven how to drive at some point on one of his holodeck shenanigans.
I was wondering if she kind of experimented with driving a car a bit on the Voyager holodeck, even though she's still not very good at it. Like the first part of that car chase is not even like a chase. It's just like, it's dangerous, but it's just like Seven trying to operate this motor vehicle and going the wrong way on a one-way road and stuff like that. Like before there's even anyone chasing her, it's kind of
that was
dangerous.
later
on figures out right on red is cool, so I was giving her points for that. Oh, look, right on.
I thought that her driving stuff was almost a little too campy. Like they would recognize that what they're doing is like putting themselves in kind of immediate physical danger, and it seeed like a bit much, even though they're trying to hurry, that they'd be driving against traffic. That's beyond Kirk and the Flivver and a piece of the action. But
I guess after watching 09 Star Trek, I'm like, yeah, Kirk and they totally would jump in the car and just drive.
But it led to some good sequences. By the way, I see Geek Filter. I think we already threw up the quote, but I liked it. I pointed to a favorite scene between them where Raffi says, "I hate everything," and Seven dryly responds, "But you hide it so well."
Yeah,
that's good stuff. That's good stuff.
I did find it amusing that they're both so ignorant about how the 21st century works, or even the 23rd century, now that I think about it, because they had these things there too. They don't switch on the lights and the sirens on the car to get all the other cars ahead of them out of the way as they drive around. It's like, it just doesn't occur to them to switch it on, even though we see a police.
Yeah, the tricorder could probably figure that out. You know, the tricorder is doing everything else, so you could probably just use the tricorder to find the switch for that stuff.
Yeah,
I love that. That what do you call it? That Seven. Like, what is it? Raffi, did she doesn't shoot, but she shatters the window to get into the car.
Yeah, she uses the phaser disruptor,
she does.
the Confederation gun. And they actually did a good job with the continuity. I was watching after that, any shot of this car, that window is down.
Nice.
It never came back up.
But
yeah,
good like
job.
Seven is like, you probably could have gotten in without doing that. And what does she say? Like, yeah, but this was more fun. She's got to take out that energy somewhere.
Who doesn't want to vandalize a police car?
Who doesn't want to shoot a phaser? I mean, that's probably old hat to her, but
yeah, that part's old. But getting to vandalize a 21st century police car.
Andrew Hayes in the comments asks, "Is this the first car chase in Star Trek history?" Or no?
No, that honor, if you want to call it an honor, actually belongs
Voyager?
to Star Trek Nemesis. Had the dune buggy chase.
Were they actually
chronologically?
being chased?
These guys went back in time, so this one came first. But
yeah, I was thinking Voyager in their time travel episode.
What doesn't Yeah, the ChronoWorks guys are chasing Rain Robinson's microbus at some point.
Yeah, they had to send down a shuttle.
That's in the 90s. So that one beats this one too.
So there we go. But yeah, it's happened a few times. There was a car chase in the most recent season of Lower Decks. There was a car chase in Star Trek 09. So it has been known to happen on occasion.
Maybe she didn't want to turn on the sirens because that was too authoritarian.
I think they just didn't think of it.
They're trying to keep a low profile. I mean, driving like that doesn't.
About that driving.
Theoretically, they're trying on some level to keep a low profile. It doesn't mean you're able to accomplish it.
I just kept thinking of the scene where the Master is in is with Chang Li in the '96 Doctor Who TV movie, and they have all this trouble with traffic, and the Master's all, "This is an ambulance," and he's like, "Oh yeah, right," and switches on all the lights and sirens, and everyone gets out of his way. Kept waiting for Eric Roberts to shout that, and he wasn't in this episode.
The city of Austin that we live in has notoriously bad traffic, but I don't think it can compare to Los Angeles traffic, which I hear everyone who's ever lived there mention that it's just kind of an experience in and of itself. They mentioned that where Rios is detained, Castaic is 25 miles away, and then at one point Raffi says, "Oh, you're kidding! It's going to take us an hour to get there." Which, I mean, very often it takes an hour to go shorter distances than that here in Austin. So I felt like that was pretty good for LA. Like I thought the rule of thumb was everything's like an hour and a half or 2 hours away. In Los Angeles,
it's a police GPS, so it factors in that you have the lights on and the sirens going.
There you go.
Which speeds things up a little bit.
Well, speaking of Rios, we should talk about his detainment with ICE, his incarceration. We see the immigration officers be big jerks to him. But did y'all think this is believable? Did y'all buy this, or did you think that they kind of made it a little too ridiculous?
Like as with the first appearance of ICE, I feel like you can make a case that there's do exist more nuanced moments of interaction with these people, but also I suspect this is a fairly reasonable reflection of reality, and I don't necessarily need to see a good apple.
Well,
Brian, what did you think?
Oddly, what I found was slightly more jarring was, and I realized it was weird, was some of the blunt way they describe stuff. And I realized, if they ran into somebody on an alien planet who described, this is how our alien planet works to Janeway or Picard or whatever, I think I would just say, oh yeah, of course, that's how it works. But because we actually live in this society, having the exact same style of bluntness and shorthand for getting down how does this planet work, it did feel perhaps slightly rough, only because having grown, it's not an alien planet. So, but I was like, I don't know, it feels hypocritical to complain about that, because that's how they generally do all the alien planets too, is that the characters show up and are kind of broad stereotypes to quickly fill you in on how this planet works and what the rules are of this strange new world. So it was like, they're just doing the Star Trek thing. It just on Earth's past. Why should I feel like that's unfair for them to do that? So.
Well, Geek Filter in the comments says, quotes Rios, they make you pledge allegiance to a flag? That's hardcore.
Yeah. Which I think that's making, people say pledge to the flag is kind of weird. And it's weird that we all had to do that in school when we were kids. That's, if like when other countries do stuff like that, we kind of paint it to look very like weird and totalitarian. But, here's my hot take on all this stuff. I actually think they pulled punches. I think with the way they presented law enforcement and the way that they presented ICE here, like when he makes the dude sign the deportation papers and he says, I need your Juan Hancock instead of John Hancock. It's like, oh yeah, would someone be like that openly racist at work here? And I don't know if they do it at work, but I mean, there were ICE Facebook groups where people who worked at ICE would, they would share like racist memes to each other. And it was horrifically much worse stuff than that. So that's definitely part of the culture. When Raffi yells at the policewoman at the desk at the police department, and they just kind of like brush that off. I think like oh no, like when you like yell at cops, they tend to get like kind of like aggressive. Especially someone who looks like Raffi. I think that when they actually pull over their police car and the woman cop pulls out her gun, she's like, get out of the car. Like I've watched a lot of videos of car chases and stuff. That is like the nicest way of like asking someone to get out of a car I've ever seen in that situation. So when we see the detainment center, there's not like a bunch of like little kids behind one of these fences, crying like mommy. Like every time I see footage of like inside of these facilities, that's the thing you see. It's always like a bunch of children crying. So actually I feel like the episode, if anything,
they soft pedaled it.
Yeah, for sure. But that's my opinion on it. Mm-hmm. I was glad we saw Teresa again. I think she's going to return too. She does say like, if you ever need anything. And she tells him, like I owe you a favor. I don't, because I guess she respected him like trying to help her, even though he didn't do anything but other than get himself in trouble. But she does offer like, if you ever need anything. Maybe she thinks he's cute and wants to just have an excuse to hang out with him.
You're absolutely going to get deported and locked up and deported. So isn't it kind of a, oh, by the way, should you somehow get out of all of this mess, then and look me up, then we could go out or something. But I'm not really expecting to ever see you again for the rest of my life.
I think he should take her up on her offer and say, "Oh, actually, it would help if you could defeat Q for us."
Well, I don't know if she can help with that one. I liked the self-aware moment where Rios is explaining to the guard with a face like a Ferengi. I don't know if he looked that much like a Ferengi, but when he explains like, I think this crusty old admiral is a flesh and blood robot, but I'm not really sure because no one can explain it to me.
Oh, that was the other funnier than Lower Decks moment for me. I know it's a bit Deadpool, but I still laughed so hard, and I'm still not quite sure what to make. That apparently Rios has asked people what is Picard, and nobody can give him an answer that he can understand. And I just find that wonderfully meta, but But,
yeah, I'd forgotten that was mixed in there. Was the acknowledgement maybe of fan confusion over, is Picard a robot? Is he not a robot? What kind of robot? That it did crack me up. That did crack me up. That made me laugh.
But I like the way that they also kind of reiterate, like, he has flesh and blood. Like, so I think some people get the impression he has, like, wires and circuitry, and so it's like, no, like, he's like, the way I keep comparing it is, like, if you've seen New Battlestar Galactica, like, those organic Cylons, he's like one of those. He's supposed
Even
to be indistinguishable from a human.
I used to have confusion over the replicants in Blade Runner, who, as far as I understand, are essentially fully flesh and blood.
Yeah.
Just, constructed. But
good
yeah, they're not
comparison.
supposed to be robots.
When I was a little kid, that confused me too. I the first time I watched Blade Runner, I was real unsure what they were, but
It was honestly one of the first times that we had seen that level of, like, essentially a biological construct that would be kind of discussed as if it were a robot, but wasn't a traditional wires and steel and all that stuff.
I mean, I'm kind of assuming it's like basically a clone body with a positronic brain stuffed in the skull, I guess, and a little battery to make that work, I guess.
No, I think the brain is still like organic matter. It's just like replicated.
So they aren't positronic androids anymore.
I don't know. Can you have like organic positronics?
I don't. I mean, it wouldn't be positronics. It would be, wetware of some sort.
I'm betting that sometime before this season is out, some injury or something may happen to Picard that might answer this for us.
Yeah. I don't know. I think they also just might like never touch on it.
It almost feels like that line was just
that was the end of it.
Yeah.
But we also, one time Worf said we don't discuss why TOS Klingons look different with outsiders. And they, a few years later, they end up explaining that on Enterprise, like a decade later. So who knows?
And then somebody came along and retconned it again after that. So,
yeah.
No, he's flesh and blood. And then, oh no, later on he'll be a cyborg. But it's
yeah, well, we'll see. But yeah, we get Rios on the bus setting up what I think will be like an exciting opening action sequence in next week's episode. Let's talk about Jurati and the Queen, and then the car chase with the cops that she has to help Seven and Raffi with. The Borg Queen in this episode, like I finally feel like I have like the Borg Queen I want from First Contact. Yes, like different actor, different performance playing the Queen, but like that weird, I call it like the scary, I guess, like kind of sexual nature of the Borg Queen. That movie where she seems like terrifying to look at, but she's also like real flirty, and I was like,
yeah, she is in a sort of almost constant state of seducing. It
yeah,
seems
like it freaked me out as a kid, when I saw First Contact back in '96, and then here, like when she's kind of flirty with Jurati, and when she's like, oh yes, our entwinement is what she calls, like, their connection from earlier in the season, and just like their banter when Jurati's.
I was going to say real quick, she seems to go after lonely people who like Data and Jurati.
Yeah, the outsiders, the outcast, but also people that are like really brilliant and would have a lot to offer.
Right.
I guess I thought the difference here between First Contact Queen and this Queen is the First Contact Queen is about as subtle as a brick. And this Queen, there's a whole layer of kind of crafty, I'm saying one thing, but I want something else. And kind of, you really have to, this Queen feels a lot more complex in her deception.
A three-dimensional chess player.
Yeah, three-dimensional chess player, whereas the Borg Queen in First Contact is playing checkers, where, like, listen, I'm just going to make you so horny, you tell me how to unlock the computer. And that's pretty much, she just flat out lays it out. This Queen, what's her game? What exactly is she? She's up to something, but we don't know what she's up to. And that makes the whole sexy thing, I think, a little more interesting when it's not just there's something more to it than just vamping all over the protagonist. I was thinking about the Queen on a bigger level, and is she I mean, can we even really call her the Borg Queen if she's not the collective made incarnate?
Who is she queen of?
Yeah. There is no. I mean, I guess now that she's in the past, there is a collective out there, but she's not hooked up to them. She is not a avatar, a representative of the collective will. She is literally, like Hugh was, a freed ex-Borg who can do whatever the hell she wants. She is just choosing to, try to help the collective, apparently, we presume, and that this is her own choice. But, you could potentially save this Borg as well as the same way you saved Hugh or Seven. If you worked on her a bit, there is no outside signal from the collective that's going to keep forcing her to comply with the will of the collective. She's not hooked up to a collective. Nobody seems to be trying to do that, which, given that Seven is there, you think that might occur to her as an angle to be worth trying.
She's also saying things like, don't trust. I don't believe in trust. Beware the species that hasn't eliminated that word. And Jurati points out, that's a weird thing to say to someone you're trying to get to trust you. But at the end, Jurati does kind of betray the queen. She's like, okay, look, I'll stay and keep you company if you help me with the transporter. Yeah. And then at the end, she's like, nope, I limited your access again. I'm walking away. And the queen seems kind of mad, when she's screaming like Agnes. But really, is that not what the queen wanted? Like, you taught her what you were trying to teach her about, don't be trustworthy, betray people.
I think Agnes is going to come back and talk to her anyway later, but I think she wants to do it on her terms. Let the queen know who's in charge on this ship. Captain left me with the con, not you, and I'm in charge. Yeah. So we talk when I want to talk.
If she gets too arrogant, though, she might be Icarus and fly too close to the sun, and then the queen's going to get the leg up on her.
I don't. She still seems to be very. At this point, making sure that the Borg Queen understands that you're in charge is actually a defensive act that could protect you rather than, being submissive to the Queen and treating her as an equal or something.
I guess it remains to be seen how much under the thumb of the Queen she is. Like, she may show an act of defiance, but she may still, the Queen's words may still be working on her, and we'll have to kind of see how that plays out.
Yeah.
I'm liking the chess game between them for sure.
Yes. The generally in the past, the Borg Queen and often Borgs in general have appeared to have access to vast amounts of knowledge through their link with the collective. This queen has only whatever is inside her head or the memory processors that are plugged into her body, but she still seems really, really super smart and to know lots and lots of stuff. So I guess I'm just kind of wondering, does she have some sort of cached, zipped up version of the... Well,
was she the queen from Fascist Future?
Yeah.
Is that where they got her?
Yeah. And but she, like the Elurians, have some understanding of the collective in other timelines. So.
Sure. Which I guess if you've got Wi-Fi to other timelines, then you're going to get that info no matter what, I guess.
Yeah.
But also, if that's, even if they didn't, presumably before they were conquered by the fasci humans of the future, they were off Borging it up for millennia, maybe, absorbing alien cultures.
Seven was really smart, even after she got unplugged from the collective.
Yeah.
But not as smart as this queen is.
You don't get to be queen for nothing.
Well, I don't know if there would necessarily be a significant difference between the queen and Seven at this particular juncture, but since neither of them can reach out and call the collective. But anyway, I'm not so much complaining as just making an observation that she seems really smart for not having a collective to feed off of. So.
The only other thing I have on the queen before we move on is that I did like how, as soon as Picard is beamed to 10 forward, the queen starts talking to Jurati. She was just waiting to have a moment alone with her to start talking to her.
It's very predatory.
Yeah. It worked out well set design wise. They get to hang her in front of the big glowy green thing.
Yeah.
But that happens to be right next to the transporter pad. So,
Yeah.
it feels like the set was designed for all of these exchanges, but it's just a coincidence that that's how it was laid out last season.
And I've heard some people say that she looks like a butterfly up there as part of like that butterfly motif. Like we see like all the butterflies in the clinic. The little girl that the Watcher possessed was wearing a dress with butterflies on it. I think that's another thing. Like they might be getting like a little too cutesy if we keep seeing that, unless there's like some explanation for like the bad wolf in Doctor Who or something.
Could certainly,
that's true. Q explains
butterflies all over the place.
I'm pleased to see in our comment section that the conversation briefly went to the killing of Hugh in the previous season, and what a waste that was. Right on, everybody out there. That still super sucked.
Okay. I agree. We need a scene where somebody's watching the opening of Reading Rainbow and then like
butterfly in the sky.
Yeah. and Picard, and they're like, Picard, you've got to come over. And then some crisis happens and they forget about it. They never go back to this.
There's a butterfly. There's a butterfly in the sky in the end of Picard season 1, and like that. The finale. There's a butterfly flying around on the synth planet, and then Data even says, when Data is like wants to be unplugged, and he's saying like a butterfly that's always a butterfly is not really a butterfly at all.
That's
so
true.
the butterfly theme actually started at the end of season 1.
But yeah, hopefully they do something with it, and it's not just a little nudge, wink, wink.
We just have to do butterflies in every season of Picard. That's the explanation.
We just like butterflies.
Yeah. What do you have against butterflies?
Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Sometimes a butterfly is just a butterfly.
Well, we're running very low on time, so just real quick, I just want to talk about this last scene with Q. But he's at what appears to be like the mission Europa that has a ridiculously large advertising budget. There's ads for this Europa mission all over the place, but he seems to be like at their lab or whatever. There's actually a ton of Gorn eggs here we'll talk about in a moment. And this young woman reading a Dixon Hill book. Q has this. I'll just go ahead and read what he says, and then we can try to unpack it. But Q says, "You can't do it, and you know it. Oh, sure, you played the game for a while when nothing was at stake, when the only challenge was fooling everybody around you into thinking you had the nerve. But now it's real. The fear is choking you. Well, here's the truth. You can't do it. People are going to die, and now your fear, your doubt is the loudest voice in your head." And then when he tries to snap his fingers, nothing happens, and he says, that's unexpected and most unfortunate. I don't know if Q is talking about, like, he's talking to her. I also think you might be able to read this. Maybe he's talking to himself.
I was somewhat mystified, but in an intrigued way at the scene.
Yeah.
He definitely looks very scared and concerned at the end, and the first time I watched this, I was like, okay, I don't know why they tacked this on there. I was glad to see Q again, but I have no idea what's going on with this blonde lady. But actually, she's out there drinking tea. She's reading a Dixon Hill book, and Picard said in the first episode of the season, he mentioned he had a long-distant cousin, Renee Picard, who pioneered exploration of the solar system. This is actually, in fact, Renee Picard. She's credited in the episode as Renee Picard. So we're getting more of that Picard family history very, very soon. I think they might revisit her in the next episode. So now, is she gonna have a French accent, a British accent, an American accent? How are they gonna go with that?
We're gonna go nuts and have it Russian.
Yeah, why not? Let's just throw in one other.
That's creepy. So Q is stalking Picard's ancestor.
Yeah.
Brian, maybe you were right when they to wonder about the ambiguity of "Help us, Picard" in that first episode.
Yeah, maybe they were talking to this Picard. We kind of gave. I mean, I wasn't there. I was like listening from the cruise ship, but everyone kind of like gave Brian shit about that. So
we'll see if Brian gets the last laugh.
Yeah, we'll find out.
I'm opening the door for it. At the very least, it seems like she may be giving voice to the more nuanced side of the 21st century as we see more of her. If she, does she represent an Elon Musk type, hubris, space travel as hubris, or that the attempt to find the hopefulness and the true scientific effort to help people and lift people up. Is she going to portray that that struggle between those two sort of aspects of space colonization.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I had the thought that Q was trying to stick those thoughts, that everything he outlined, into her head, and he was putting this big thought, like, these aren't the droids you're looking for. He was getting it all ready, and then he tried to launch it and it didn't launch. And that's
what I think is most likely, because when she's like laughing at her book, and then Q's like, "That's not what I wanted you to think." So,
but but that does raise the question: why is Q trying to stick those thoughts in her head? Is he trying to fix history? Is he trying to break history? So I also think it's interesting. She's reading the book, The Pallid Man, which is apparently a character from 12 Monkeys. Pallid Sun, which is apparently a character from 12 Monkeys, the TV show.
Oh, okay.
That is a temporal paradox. Of weird temporal paradoxes created this person who is known as the Pallid Sun. And so is she some sort of temporal paradox that brought her into being? Is that what that's hinting at?
I think that was just Terry Matalas wanted to put like Easter eggs for his own past work.
Well, yes,
in there,
but does the Easter egg point at anything, or was it just a random 12 Monkey reference?
Yeah.
And yeah, it sounds like Q's trying to psych himself up. Whether you could read it as Q's trying to psych himself up, but if so, then he shouldn't be all that surprised when he fails to use his power. If he's trying to psych himself up and failing, he clearly, if he's talking to himself, then he shouldn't be all that surprised when he fails. If he's that worried about failing. So.
Yeah, I agree with Brian. I think that is most likely.
Yeah.
But that's everything for this episode. I'm gonna go through our Gorn eggs very quickly because there were many in this episode. I'm sure a lot of you.
One
noticed.
Quick final thought: I want Supervisor Laris to turn into a cat and hook up with Picard's number one.
Who's Picard's number one?
Cat and the dog.
Yeah.
Oh.
Infinite diversity.
Oh.
This can't happen, Brian. That's just too beyond the pale. It's disgusting.
So the Gorn eggs are all of our Easter eggs, in jokes, and continuity connections that I found in this episode I thought were worth mentioning. The first one is the cloaking device of Confederation La Sirena has the same classic sound effect that we first heard back in Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, my personal favorite Star Trek movie. The punk on the bus, he is listening to the song I Still Hate You, which is, I guess, like a sequel song to I Hate You. The lyrics are things like 35 years later and everyone's deranged or something like that. But it's kind of like Metallica did Unforgiven on, what was that, the Black Album, and then they did Unforgiven 2 on Reload. So I think it's like a sequel song maybe. But yeah, Kirk Thatcher reprising the character. There is a boxing poster on the wall next to 10 Forward. It is the same boxing poster that showed up in City on the Edge of Forever right before Kirk and Spock materialized in the 1930s. Guinan kept a shotgun under the bar at the 10 Forward bar on Earth. And in The Next Generation, she kept that gun from Magus 3, a souvenir she picked up on Magus 3. She kept under the bar. We saw that in Night Terrors. And she's like, that was setting number 1. Anyone want to see what setting number 2 looks like?
And both of those are references to the original Texas Guinan, who was known as something of a cowboy. So,
the time sickness that they give a name to in this episode, the Af Kelt. We first saw Guinan experience that in yesterday's Enterprise when she was aware of the shift in the timeline. The license plate on her Ford Bronco or whatever Guinan is driving, it actually says S02E01. So season 2, episode 1. That was the first appearance of Guinan in The Next Generation, and season 2, episode 1, The Child. We see her donating some of her possessions to a sanctuary district, to the 21st Mission Donation Center, so 21st Street Mission. That is a callback to Edith Keeler's, I guess, nonprofit organization in City on the Edge of Forever.
Nice.
We also, speaking of City on the Edge of Forever, we see a Floyd's Barber Shop. which Kirk and Edith Keeler walk past in the original series. I can't believe it took me so many years to figure this out, but the reason why there's a Floyd's Barber Shop in City on the Edge of Forever, like Floyd the barber in the Andy Griffith Show, they were actually using the same set, the same stage. But it was our friend Aaron who's with us in the audience, and he pointed that out to me just like yesterday or something. So I never knew that. I always just thought like, yeah, it's really weird that they did that. You know, wasn't Andy Griffith in production at the same time? And now I know. It's like, yes, it was actually the same stage they were using.
Yes.
When Rios is actually being very honest with the ICE officer with a face like a Ferengi, he kind of quotes the Space, the Final Frontier. These are the ongoing voyage. That speech, he talks about mission to seek out new life and new civilizations. The portal that the Laris-like character takes Picard through, that is extremely similar to the visuals of Gary Seven's portal in Assignment Earth, the rectangle of purple smokiness. And then at the end, when we see Q reading the newspaper, the date on the paper is actually January, not April. So maybe this is like a couple months earlier or something. Or maybe they just, prop department just didn't know what date to put on there. But on that newspaper, they say Brenner fighting unionization. That's a reference to Christopher Brenner, the Silicon Valley tech bro dude we met in Deep Space Nine in past tense. And also on the paper, there's in the fine print, it mentions universal, or not, we don't know if it's universal health cards, but UHC cards, sanctuary districts, and transparent aluminum is possibly going to be a big deal. So that's all on the newspaper of the Los Angeles Times. And then the location of Q, I guess, stalking Picard's relative is the Jackson Roykirk Plaza. And she's reading, like I mentioned, a Dixon Hill novel, The Pallid Sun, still by Tracy Torme, who is a real-life writer who wrote The Big Goodbye, Next Generation Season 1. They have, in universe, said that Dixon Hill was the product of an Earth author named Tracy Torme. But yeah, the Jackson Roykirk Plaza, Jackson Roykirk was an Earth scientist in the year 2002 who sent the Nomad space probe out into space, and it got confused and thought Kirk was its creator. You see a picture of Jackson Roykirk in the original series. They look him up on the ship computer, and he's wearing like this red kind of like military uniform thing. It's similar to what like Colonel Green wore and what Khan wore when it showed like what they looked like on Earth. So yeah, do y'all remember like back in 2002 when people wore like these red shirts? Like 2001 it was all like frosted tips and like the baggy Jinko jeans, and then like 2002 we switched to like these red shirts with like little military badges on the chest or whatever he's wearing.
Such a thing. The big trend. I feel awkward about it, but yes, I had a few of those.
Yeah. Well,
everyone was just wanting to dress like Mork from Mork and Mindy.
Yeah, for sure.
Finally, 1981 caught up with us.
Yes.
That's all I've had for the Gornags, but we want to share some feedback from our audience. We were asking people what did they think of Star Trek Discovery Season 2 now that season has concluded. So Dave's about to share some of that. Before he does that, I just want to ask everyone, what do you think about these first 4 episodes of Picard? We're almost halfway through the season. Please comment on YouTube. Let me know on Twitter. You can comment on the Tex-Trek Facebook page and tell us how do you feel about the first 4 episodes of Star Trek Picard Season 2, and we'll talk about that next week. But Dave, what did people have to say about Discovery Season 4?
Sure. Let's start off with Paralyzing Rook. He writes, he or she, I don't know. I love season 4. Everybody on the ship finally settled down. They were more comfortable with life. Saru picked up some hot older Vulcan chick. Zora adjusted to being alive. Stamets didn't seem like he was about to lose his damn mind. Burnham just sat in the chair being beautiful. I like that summation of it. Let's see. Steve Ghostworld said, I really like Disco, but I constantly feel disappointed with writing and the pacing. It has so many odd choices, but overall the high-level concepts were fantastic, but the execution and writing is really lacking. It's such a weird show. Really high highs and low lows. Jill47 says, Jet Rado and Kovic were great. episode 12 was the most interesting since New Eden, in my opinion. Was New Eden, was that a season 2 one, I think?
Yeah, that was the second episode of the second season where they have like the church planet.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Which I think was a backdoor proof of concept pilot type thing for Strange New Worlds.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It was Pike-centric stuff.
Yeah, and it was written by Akiva Goldsman. So, yeah, I think they were like testing out, like, let's do a Planet of the Week story to prove we can do it with this actor.
That's an interesting thought. Next up, from Ladies Who Trek, I appreciate the cerebral tone this season. I love linguistics and now work in communications, so I thoroughly enjoyed watching how Burnham and company were able to achieve first contact, or perhaps it's the other way around, with Species 10C. Well done. And lastly, Bill Hronick says, I think it was great. The stuff that impressed me most was about loss, grief, justice, and amends. Great move to have Book and Tarka working together as they were both dealing with loss and grief, and they ultimately took different paths. So I thought some really good comments in there.
Very
and
cool.
I kind of agree with the critical one myself. High highs and low lows.
The undiscovered Magato, did you have his in there?
Let's see. I think I did. I wasn't sure if we had time for... let's see.
I think that's the one that sounded most like Dave's reaction.
I think I may have deleted that one because I thought it was too harsh. Okay. But hold on a second, I'm just.
Well, he has a crinky Magato. That's okay. We'll get him next time.
I don't think I have it handy. Sorry.
Okay. Well, that's going to be it for this week. But if you're checking us out live, y'all all need to get ready to go to the Starfleet Boy After Dark channel. Starfleet Boy, do you want to beam on over to the Starship Texas and tell us what's going on in your neck of the woods later tonight?
This is not Starfleet Boy. This is Engineering Laddie. I forgot to change my name and my avatar. But tonight we're gonna talk about time travel and Kirk Thatcher, pretty much.
And Halo.
No, and Halo. If you come on, so
did you see
be
it?
awesome.
Did you watch it yet?
No, I didn't see it yet.
No, you bastard.
Well, you can tell me. Should I watch it? I'll watch it at the time.
Yeah, go watch it right now. Go watch it right now. And we'll talk
all right,
about
I'll go watch it. Okay, fine.
Okay,
perfect.
so in about 1 hour,
yeah,
come on over to Starfleet Boy After Dark.
Thank you. All right, back to my job I go.
All right. We will be back next week to discuss Star Trek Picard Season 2, Episode 5. That's going to be live at 7 p.m. Central and available wherever you get your podcast. And until then, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek. And follow Fatheree on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you.